Our interview this morning is with Lorin Storey. Lorin was born in Fort Worth, Texas, September of 1946. He served in the United States Army from October of 1966 until October of 1969. His highest rank attained was E5, Sergeant. This interview is conducted at Burleson, Texas on Friday, January the 28th, year 2011. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related to Lorin in any way. Also in the room we have Milton Gibson and Gary Burton, who are our videographers. This interview is conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress and also for Operation Remember, City of Burleson, Texas. With that little introduction, Lorin, we'll let you tell us your story, your words of your time in the U.S. military, sir.
When I was in high school, Vietnam was just beginning. And I had some friends that quit school and volunteered to go. And then I don't remember what year it was, 65, I believe, or something like that, the movie The Green Beret came out. And I saw that and I thought, I want to go. So I enlisted and wanted to do my part. And I had always played Army when I was a little kid. And thought it was wonderful, glorious. And anyway, I joined the Army, and I decided I wanted to be a paratrooper. So I volunteered to be a paratrooper, and I went to basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and that all went real well. And then I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia for my AIT, Advanced Infantry Training. And then from AIT I went to Fort Benning, Georgia to jump school. And that was a pretty grueling 5 weeks. Mainly got us in physical shape, and then we got our airborne qualification. And I know one of the times when it was our last qualifying jump. It was actually too windy for them to drop us, but they dropped us anyway. And so when I came in, the people were on the ground, and they had I could see medical jeeps and ambulances and stuff all around. And there were people on the ground telling you with bullhorns telling you what to do. And I was coming in backwards at a pretty good clip, and they told me to take a certain slip, and I tried that, and that didn't work. And they told me to try another slip, which is pull down on the risers, and it's supposed to control the chute a little bit, but that didn't work. And they said, well, you better hold what you got, because you hadn't got time for another one. And I hit, and I was hit feet, butt, and head, and flipped over, and then the wind was blowing, dragging me. And I released the chute, and the ambulance pulled up and said, we thought we'd save you the trouble of calling us. And I said, no, I think I'm okay. And they said, are you kidding, the way you hit? And so when I was getting my equipment ready to go back in, I noticed that we had 2x4s in our gun cases that were attached to our leg, our rifle cases. And the 2x4s in that bag were broken. So I came out pretty lucky there. Anyway, from Fort Benning, I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and was with the 82nd Airborne there. And we did several jumps while we were there. And then that was 1st of April. And then in August, I got my orders for Vietnam, so I went home for a month, and then went over to Vietnam. And I was there for, I got caught in leap year, so I was actually there a year and a day. We landed at, I believe it was Phan Rang, we landed in, I guess it was Saigon, and then they took us to by truck to Van Rang, which is where our rear base camp was. And then from there, they put us on a chopper and we went up to Chu Lai, which is where my unit was at that time, which was the first 327 of the 101st Airborne. And there was a big Marine camp there. We didn't stay in the rear very long because they sent us right out the field. And the way we operated in Vietnam was they would send us out on search and destroy. We call them search and annoy missions. But our shortest, I think, was 30 days, and longest was like 45. And that was without a hot meal unless we got, well, when we got resupplied, they would bring us ammunition and sea rations. So we had to carry 5 days chow. We got resupplied every 5 days. And I went out, and I think we went to a fire base there in Chu Lai, and we set up perimeter guard, or they used us for perimeter guard. And I guess it was the second night I was there. I was sitting on a bunker looking out outside the perimeter, and we were set up on a side of a hill, and there was a little valley going up to the left, and then a finger coming off on the other side. Anyway, it was kind of a horseshoe-shaped perimeter, and while I was sitting there, this medic came up, and I didn't know who he was at the time, but wanted to know where C Company was, and I said, I think they're to the left, but I said, I'm not sure. So he started outside the perimeter, and I was green, and I didn't know. I thought he knew what he was doing. He was, been there a while. And I said, I don't think I'd go out there. And he said, why not? And I said, well, I don't know what's out there. And he mumbled something and went on out anyway, and was gonna, I guess, take a shortcut and go over to this other company who was looking for somebody. And about that time, 2 or 3 grenades went off, and so he was out there all night, and you could hear him calling. And I told them, what had happened, and they wouldn't send anybody out. And the next morning, they finally went out and found him, but he had died. And I always felt really bad about that because I felt like I should have done something, but I was, like I said, I was green. I didn't know, what to do. So that bothered me still does, bothered me a long time. Anyway, then we went back into the rear, and one of the few times, and I got to go to the only USO that I really show that I really saw had Martha Ray in it, and I was real impressed with that. So, but then we moved back to Van Rang, and which is, like I said, where our rear base camp was. And from there we went to packed up and went to Van Thiet, which was farther south, but it was kind of in the mountains. And we still hadn't. We started running in. When I first got there, we were fighting the more or less the Viet Cong, which were the guys in the black pajamas, and they weren't well equipped. And if we put out a good base of fire, usually they'd run. So it was all kind of fun. I was, had always liked camping. This was a little overkill, but we camped out a lot. And whenever we made contact, like I said, if we put down a good base of fire, a lot of times they just run. So it was kind of fun. It was like being in the movies, and we didn't have anybody hurt except for that one medic, which I mentioned earlier, and forgot to say it, but they found out too that there were some morphine syringes missing out of his medical bag, so they figured he may have been high when he went out. And that right there told me, not to mess with anything while I was out in the field, because it'll sure get you killed. But in Fayette, we somewhere, yeah, I got malaria while I was there, and they kept telling me I had a bad cold, and I said, well, I don't have any of the cold symptoms, and they said, no, it's a cold. So they finally, my temperature spire got up to like 103, and they finally sent me in out of the field, and they found out that I had malaria, and by the time they found out, the next day I was well. So because they put me on some kind of medicine, but it had already run its course. And so I was in the hospital for about a week with that, and rejoined my outfit in Song Bay. And this was right after the Tet Offensive had started. This was in January, and I believe it was the 23rd of January, 22nd or 23rd. We were out on one of our patrols, and we had people that were out on R&R. We had people that were out. By this time, we had some that had been wounded, and had some of them that were sick with malaria, and so we were way under strength. And so they put our platoon in with another company, and because I think we only had like, I believe it was 12 guys out of 30 left. So they split us up and put us in different platoons and our company, and we started. We moved out, and somewhere along the line, some guy shot at me, and I could see the tracers, coming. So I got down and shot back. Well, that was one incident, and then we left there and started walking down a trail, and then all heck broke loose up in front of us, and the lead platoon had walked into an ambush, and so they told us to come up and form a perimeter around an LZ and secure it so they can get the dead and wounded out. And we pulled back and got out of that. I didn't see anything there, but heard it, and they thought that they had sent up reinforcements, so they got up and started charging, and the Vietnamese skedaddled. They left, and so we secured this LZ, and the helicopters came in. They took out the dead and wounded, and then we started off across the LZ and started into the woods, and I was walking point, and my best friend John Grimmett was walking. He was probably 5 or 6 guys behind me, but he was a E5 then, and loved to carry the machine gun, the M60 machine gun, and he was a platoon sergeant. They made him platoon sergeant, and he still wanted to carry the machine gun. So we started out, and he put me on point, and I came up to a trail, and I asked him if I should follow the compass, direction of the compass, or follow the trail, and he said just follow the compass. So I stepped across the trail and stepped over some bamboo that was down, and a slack man, which is the second guy behind me, the point man actually looks for booby traps, and then the slack man kind of watches his back, watches out. And he saw some movement and shot. Well, then the whole, there was another ambush set up that we had walked into. And luckily I fell in a little kind of indention thing and was, got my rucksack off and put it up in front of me for cover. And I started shooting where I saw the tracers coming from. And when I'd shoot at him, then somebody else would open up and from a different direction, and I'd shoot at him, but I was out in front, and the other guys couldn't shoot because I was out there, and they didn't know exactly where I was. So in all that, I got hit in the leg, right calf, and I heard him calling for a medic, and I asked Sherrod, my slack man, I said, who got hit? And he said, John. And so I didn't think much about it. He was too nice a guy to get killed. And then I got hit in the leg, like I said. And I told Sherrod, I said I got hit in the leg, and he called for a medic, and I said, no, I said, don't send him up here, because I knew he'd just get shot, because there wasn't any cover. There wasn't any cover. And they told us to fall back, pull back after a while, and seemed like hours, but I guess it was probably just a few minutes. And so we were pulling back, and I crawled up and I saw the medic, and I asked him how John was, and he said he was dead. And at the time I didn't even realize it, but he was kneeling right over him then. And John had tried to set up the machine gun, and when he did, he got hit. And he was just that way. I like to think it was, because he was trying to help me out so much, but it was that was just the way he was. And anyway, that hit me pretty hard. And so we were crawling back. They said pull on back on to the LZ that we had just come across, and they were dragging some guy, big kid. I can't remember his name now, but he'd been hit in the shoulder, and so they were dragging him, and his head was kind of bouncing along. So I crawled over and I was holding his head up, and somebody came up and said, "Let me have your rifle," and so I handed it to him, and they finally got him up, and they carried him across the LZ, and I ran across, and that was the last I saw of my rifle. I don't remember who got it, but a friend of mine had a .45 and pistol, which 7 shots. It's not a whole lot out there, but he gave me that. And then the medic looked at my leg and said that was just a scratch or just a flesh wound. And what had happened, the bullet hit and glanced off, but the lead came out and went nearly all the way through my leg, but you couldn't see that. It was just, it just looked like a nick. And so he put some iodine on it and a Band-Aid, and they got the wounded out. Well, I guess my rifle, I thought my rifle went with them, but found out later, talking to a friend of mine that lives here in Fort Worth, that he had it because he was carrying a machine gun, and he was down to I think 100 rounds or something like that. So he didn't know, and he kept my rifle so he'd have something. Anyway, we called in artillery and air support that night, and they shelled and puffed the Magic Dragon, which was a C-47 that had Gatling guns and miniguns both on it, and they shot where the ambush supposedly was. And next morning they went out to, we had to leave John out there all night. The next morning they went out to get him, and the Vietnamese were still there. And so they pulled back and went around and came in behind them and ran them. You know, they took off then, but they, I got my pack back and my rucksack, and they brought John's body in, and we found out about a week later that we were surrounded on 3 sides, and it wasn't the Viet Cong anymore. It was the NVA, the North Vietnamese regulars, and they were tough. We fought them for the rest of the war. The VC were pretty much out, and they didn't run like the VC. So it found out war wasn't as fun as it was, or as I thought it was. Nothing like the movies. And so we walked back into our base camp there at Song Bay, and it took us about 3 days. And my calf got really big. I mean, really swelled up, and a lot of infection in it. And so they started giving me penicillin and bicillin and stuff. And so the rest of the my platoon went back out in the boonies, and I stayed in the rear trying to get my leg back in shape. And finally, one day, about a week later, the first sergeant came over, and he said, I've had guys hurt a lot worse than you that are, back online now. And I said, I don't know what to tell you. I said, it still hurts like the devil. And he said, well, I'm going to take you to the field hospital. And he said, there better be something wrong with you. And I said, okay. So we went, and they took me in and peeled the scab off. And the doctor said, oh, Mike, he said, come here and look at this. He started pulling all this stringy stuff out. And then they got a probe and stuck it nearly all the way through my leg. And they said, there's something went in there, so, but they couldn't feel anything, and their x-ray machine was broken, so they packed it and put me in the hospital, and I was in there for about 3 weeks, something like that. And they would put wick in it, and then every day they'd pull it out and then repack it, and that hurt a whole lot worse than the gunshot itself. And so eventually I rejoined my unit, and by then we went to Phu Bai, which was up north by Way, and we were going to operate in the Ashaw Valley. So I believe the first cav had gone in and they got kicked out, and the Marines went in and they got kicked out. We went in, and I like to think it was because they saw our patches, because they were scared of us. We were the Screaming Eagles. The Vietnamese had never seen an eagle, and they called them chickens. The Marines and everybody else called them the Puking Buzzards. But we were the Screaming Eagles, so we went in, and we didn't hit anything, hardly. I mean, very little. But we found a cache, however you pronounce it, I heard it was 50 trucks. I'm not sure if it was that many, but they were 65 model Russian trucks, and 2 or 3 anti-aircraft guns and some artillery pieces. And the trucks, they had dug holes and backed them down in these holes or pits, whatever, took the motors out, and so people were digging around trying to find all this stuff, and I noticed that whenever they'd find something, it was about 10 or 15 feet from the left front tire. And so I told my lieutenant about it, and he told them, and they started checking there, and they found a lot of the motors and a lot of the they found a lot of machine guns and 51 caliber machine guns, and they just drop a incendiary grenade on the motor, and it burned completely through. Then the engineers came in and blew up the trucks, and we went out in a different direction and went up the side of a mountain, and it had been raining, and so we stopped, and we're taking a break, and I was sitting under a bush, had my back up under this bush and smoked a cigarette and put it out, and just a little bit after that the sun came out, and so I was just sitting there kind of not really thinking about anything, and looked around, and I saw 3 Vietnamese guys just standing there looking at me, and one was pointing, like he was saying, is that a GI under that bush? And the other one was looking, and like, where? And he said, right there. So I clicked my gun to full automatic and raised it up and started shooting, and they ducked, and I just followed them all the way to the ground, and then I ducked, and the guy beside me said that as soon as I did, he said the tracers went about 3 inches over my head, and then we started pulling back, and got back down to the base of the hill, and they sent some other people up there, and they found a whole battalion-sized base camp that they had vacated. Then we moved to a different location, and we pulled guard at night, usually sitting by the machine gun, and so, but it was real dark, and I mean just pitch black, and I had walked the trail several times to the gun position where I could find it when it was my turn to pull guard, and I was going up there, pull my guard, and stepped off a little bank and got my foot caught in some roots on the side of the bank, and sprained, I think they said it sprained the instep part of my foot, and it started swelling up, so they sent me and some other guys to the rear that had been were sick, and we had another one or 2 wounded, and so they sent us to the rear, and then they sent me to a hospital ship, Repose, and they x-rayed it and said it was just a sprain and put it in a cast, and so I was in that cast for about 3 weeks in the hospital, and got out and went back to my unit, and we kept running into the making contact, and it was just kind of just sporadic. I mean, wasn't every day, but it was really starting to get to me. I had a friend of mine, we were set up one night, and it had been raining, and I set up a little, tied my poncho up to to a tree, or in between two trees, and made a little tent, and was laying in there, and was making some hot chocolate. Had a heat tab going, and I was boiling some water for some hot chocolate, and we started getting mortared. And I think there were 10 or 15 rounds, and none of them landed outside our perimeter. But I looked up and saw a friend of mine, Phil Nestico, was in his little hooch thing that he'd made, and one mortar round went right through it and blew him out the back. And so we got the medics down there, and they came and checked him out and everything. And it was dark by then, and they couldn't get in anybody to take him out. So the next morning they had me get everybody up to move out, and I told this Tom to get Phil ready, and he said, I said, Storey is dead. And I said, no. I said, he's just asleep. And he said, no, he's dead. And so I went over and was going to check his pulse, and he was already cold and stiff. And so we had to bend him back in shape, because the way he was laying, we had to bend his arms down and tie him up in a poncho. And then they carried him out on a pole. And we were in an area where there wasn't a lot of water, so I couldn't really wash my hands. And so for about 2 or 3 days, every time I'd take a bite of food or something, I'd smell less, and it really started getting to me. And from then on, it seemed like every time we'd make contact, I'd cringe. I was afraid somebody else was going to get hit, or hurt. And I think it was Captain or Major Winters that was in the Band of Brothers, said his grandson asked him if he was a hero, and he said no, but he said, I served with the company of them. And that was kind of my feelings, the guys I was with were heroes, and of course the main heroes were the ones that didn't come home. Those will always be my heroes. I made it through that, and it came time for my time to come home, and I still hadn't had my R&R. And it was the last month there. I was supposed to go home at the end of September, and they said, okay, your R&R is from the 2nd to the 7th. Said, you should be back here no later than the 9th. We'll send you back out to the field for a week, and then you can come back in and clear and go home. And I said, okay. So, and I probably shouldn't say it, but I got back the 19th. I was 10 days AWOL. And I had stayed with some friends of mine in Benoit, that was where our rear base camp was then. And so they got me flight up to Da Nang, and I had some friends that I'd made when I was in the hospital there. And then they got me a flight back on up to Phu Bai. So when I got back, the the executive officer had been my platoon leader, lieutenant. He was a captain now, but we had a formation. He called me and he asked me, he said, where in the hell have you been? And I said, just screwing around. And he said, you have a good time? And I said, yeah. He said, congratulations, you made sergeant while you were gone. And so I cleared and went home. And they sent me to Fort Benning, Georgia, and I was had 11 months left. If I'd have had a year, they were going to send me right back. And I didn't want to go back. I had thought after basic and AIT and jump school and all that, before actual combat, that you know, I might want to make it a career, and I decided that wasn't for me. I didn't like getting shot at. But I was with the infantry school there, and all I was a gopher. I'd go for this and go for that. But I was around officers all the time, and I never did care for officers. I did run into a guy that was going through OCS that was my DI in basic training, and I was really surprised because we saw each other and he remembered my name, you know, and I thought, man, out of all the people that go through there, and he remembered me, so I felt pretty good about that. But I used to take him to pick up his laundry and stuff because he didn't have any rank, and they couldn't have a car there in OCS. And but it turned out he was a really nice guy. But I finally finished up my tour there and decided, you know, to go ahead and get out. And I had thought about, I had a guy came up to me later on and wanted to know if I wanted to join the Texas Airborne National Guard. He said, and I said, no, I said, I don't think so. I said, I think I've had enough. But they asked me, you know, before I got out, they said, you know, would anything make you re-enlist? And I said, yeah. I said, if you'll give me immediate promotion to E6, give me $10,000, which was at that time, the re-up bonus. I said, give me a $10,000 re-up bonus and guarantee me that I'll make Brigadier General in 6 months. And they said, get out of here. So they didn't want to talk to me anymore. So I'll still have contact with several of the people that I was in Vietnam with, and one, like I said, lives here lives in Fort Worth, and another one just passed away. I guess it was last summer sometime. But I still talk to John's Grimmett's wife occasionally. We keep in touch, and it was just, I wouldn't trade anything in the world for the experience, but I don't want to do it again.
Good.
That's it.
You bet. Went in the Army. You liked camping. The movie Green Berets was one of the things that made you decide to go in the Army.
Yeah.
War was going on, and you thought that was. We've done a number of these. Never heard anybody saw a movie, and that's why they went in a particular branch or went a particular way.
Well, I wanted to go Special Forces, and then I found out it wasn't really what I wanted once I got in. So, but I did want to be a paratrooper.
Well, that being 101st Airborne, that was a pretty tough group. When you went to Benning, somewhere along the line they send you up that tower, you take that first step. What was that first jump like? I guess they work you up to it, Lorin, but there must have come some point when you just stepped out there into
Space.
nothing under you. Yeah. Stomach kind of come up a little bit on that?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's the first high thing you do is the 34-foot tower. That's where your fear of height starts, supposedly, psychological fear of height. You hook up to a cable, jump out, and slide down, and then they catch you down at the end, and you go back and do it again. And it's to get you used to the opening shock and fear of the height, and your position when you come out, leave the aircraft, are supposed to be. And then we went to the 250-foot tower, which is the one where your chute's already open, and they have you in a deal, and they pull you up to 250 feet and then drop you.
Kind of like Six Flags.
Yeah, only there's no cable to take you back down. You just land, and they had plowed sand all around it, and so it was pretty easy landing. And, that was pretty scary going up. The initial jump was, I guess, pride or false pride made me do it. Not to mention people behind you pushing. But everybody, doesn't want to chicken out, so to speak, and they don't really give you a chance to. Like I said, you just jump. Now, what really surprised me on my first real jump was I hadn't thought about the kind of like sticking your hand out a car window, when you're the force of the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you have the prop blast or the prop wash from the propellers, and it just tosses you around like a paper doll. I looked up and I saw my feet above my head, and I thought I'm coming down upside down. Well, on a static line, then it opens your chute automatically. We didn't do any skydiving. All of ours were static jumps. That was pretty scary.
How many times did you jump out of an airplane or a helicopter total?
I never did get to make a chopper jump, but I think it was about 15, something like that, because we had pay jumps and then simulated combat jumps, and when I was at Fort Bragg, we made quite a few. So,
when you went in country, got there and pretty quick they were sending you search and destroy missions. When you went on search and destroy, 30-day minimum, I think you said. Is this platoon strength, company strength?
Company.
But company?
Most of it company.
And that would be how many guys, Lorin?
30.
30?
Yeah. At least company. Now, when we got out, we would also go out at night and set up ambushes, and sometimes then we'd meet up with another company, and that's usually when we got resupplied, was on the 5th day. But we had ambushes just about every night going out.
I guess you had a medic or 2 or 3 in that
Yeah.
group? Okay. The resupply came by helicopter, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir.
And he brought you ammo, chow.
Clothes if we needed them, mail.
You spent this 30 days out in the woods and ate out of a can?
Basically. They had what they call long-range patrol rations, LRPs, that you added hot water to. They were dehydrated. And some of those were pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And especially the chicken and rice. But we liked those. They took up a lot of room in your pack, but they were a lot lighter than the cans. So we liked the less weight. But I carried like 10 canteens of water, which is a lot of weight right there. And I think that about all my equipment probably weighed about 70 pounds, something like that. And then carrying it too in that heat.
Yeah, this next comment I have here, I had a question about the weather. You said you were in the mountains a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Rainy?
Not so much there. That wasn't during the monsoons. It was bad part about that was besides going up steep hills with that heavy pack was it get up to like 100 or over 100 degrees in daytime, and then at night it dropped down to like 57 or something like that. So it was actually, you know, you really got cold.
You'd be
And,
soaking wet during the day, and then
yeah, I mean from sweat, and then the temperature would drop at night.
So how often you get to take a shower when you were over there?
They had showers. Whenever we came to a stream or something, we'd kind of, you know, maybe duck down in it, or sometimes we'd set up on a river or a stream and get to wash our clothes and wash off some. But other than that, you were just dirty, unless you were, I started to say lucky enough, but unfortunate enough to go to the hospital for something, or when they sent us into the rear for what they call a stand down.
You had malaria. Been a long time, but didn't you get shots or something for malaria? Did you get? Was there shots for malaria?
No, they had, I think it was quinine pills, or not, maybe
Okay.
not quinine, but it's some kind of pill.
Were you supposed to be taking them like
Well,
daily or something?
no, well, we had our daily pills. We took daily pills, and then we had what we call a Monday pill, which was every Monday the medic would come around and give these pills out, and some worked, some didn't, you know. So, excuse me. But in the hospital, when they finally found out what I had, they started giving me medicine that night, and well, they came in and woke me up in the middle of the night and said, okay, your temperature spiked. We found out that you have vivax malaria, which is the kind that's not supposed to recur. And so they gave me some medicine for that. And like I said, the next day I was feeling pretty good because it'd pretty much run its course, I guess.
There toward the end, you said that you have contact with Grimmett's wife, some contact today.
Renee
You go to
Grimmett.
see them when you got back stateside?
No, she was in Massachusetts, and I never did get to meet her. But I've talked to her on the phone quite a bit, and then letters and stuff like that. But I'm supposed to go up sometime. My wife's sister lives in Boston, and next time I go up to see her, I'm gonna or see them, I'm gonna get in contact with her, maybe meet her.
You did a year and a day in country,
Yeah, leap year.
and really, probably a month of that you were in a hospital.
Or more.
Wow. You spent, you had a real active year, and unfortunately got to spend a big portion of it really in the hospital.
Yeah.
That hospital, except for the hospital ship, it was all in country?
Yeah. Yes.
They were battalion or division or?
Yeah, most of well, I guess it'd be, I don't know. I was in Cameron Bay briefly when I was back after I had malaria, which was a big hospital there. It was just a military hospital. They had all branches of people in there, and then I was in one in Da Nang, and they had all branches there. So they were just military hospitals.
You were single all the time you were in?
Yes.
Okay. You had some contact with natives, the real Vietnamese people, South Vietnamese people. Any comments or any thoughts about them?
Just couldn't really believe that the ones that were out in the villages and stuff were that far behind. Can't think of the word I'm looking for. Basically, they were, just living off the land.
I always thought it would be a pretty good idea for
Poverty,
everybody
yeah.
in the States to see how folks over there lived.
Well, they lived in grass huts, mainly lived on rice and anything else they could find. You know, very poor people. One night we were set up in an area, and I was in a hut, and I was putting methylate on some jungle rot that I had, and people were watching me, and their kids had it, you know, all over them. So I was doctoring them with it too, and then they gave me some of their rice and thanked me for the. And I think the one thing that made my whole time over there worthwhile was when I was in the hospital. I met a kid that was, I think he was 13, and the NVA had come into his village and wanted him to go communist, and he wouldn't do it, and they killed his mother and father in front of him, and then he still wouldn't. So they bayoneted him and slashed him down the chest and stomach, and put in I think there were 178 stitches or something like that. And they left him for dead, but he still wouldn't go communist. And he came over and thanked me for helping out, you know, and that kind of made the whole thing worthwhile to me, or at least it was a good excuse anyway.
You've got a Purple Heart. You told us about that. You also have a Bronze Star. Where did you get the Bronze Star?
It was meritorious. I think probably from I'm not sure. I don't know if everybody got one or not, but I think it was probably from discovering that where the weapons and motors were on the trucks.
Okay.
And another time, a friend of mine they went down in a creek bottom, and we're starting up the other side, and there were Vietnamese on the other side, and they started shooting, and I was carrying a machine gun at that time, so I ran down the hill and got behind a tree and yelled at them and told them to direct my fire by watching the tracers. And so I shot, and the gun jammed, and it'd shoot 3 or 4 times and then jam again, and by that time they came back up, and I got back up ran back up the top of the hill, and after they were back up, and found out the bolt had broken, and so that was pretty scary.
Just as a matter of interest for you, everybody that we've talked to in these interviews, unless I ask about a ribbon or a decoration, nobody ever talks about them. I have to ask the question, where'd you get the Bronze Star? You're all the same. You don't talk about them. So
Yeah.
you're in that group, and you're all humble. We certainly appreciate you coming by this morning, Lorin. We appreciate your time that you spent in the service. You had a whale of a ride.
Thank you. Appreciate you letting me share.
You bet, sir.